So, hello, welcome along, and welcome back to the Dads in Business video podcast series, where we invite guests from the spectrum of business, life, money, home, to talk about their experiences of dad, how they're helping other dads, how they're moving forward with their career, their profession, balancing the many roles that we play as a busy working dad. As part of that, I'm delighted today to introduce our special guest who has had a really exciting, intriguing. I'm excited to learn more about his past career as an athlete, as a sports person. And he's now using that mentality, leadership approach, what he's learned, been part of a large family in his sporting career to share with dads. And I'm delighted that Adrian Bybee is here. He is a Premier Impact coach, focusing specifically with former athletes. So I'm dead excited to know what insights he can share from the athlete mindset into how we as busy working dads can share or learn and develop our own experiences and practices. Adrian, you're joining us over from the States, so I appreciate your time on this Monday morning. Thank you for coming along. Please take a moment to introduce yourself, where in the States you're coming from, and what it is you do. We'd be keen to know more.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on. It's a privilege and really it's an honor. I've been following your journey itself and been really impressed. So, again, appreciate the time and
Thank
also
you.
super honored to be here. Yeah, a little bit about me. I was a former athlete, competed in multiple sports throughout my life. Really, the two that I'll hang my hat on is skiing in the freestyle world and moguls, and then also in football. And really, after that time, really wanted to be involved with helping former athletes. So really focused on being an expert in transforming former athletes into high impact leaders and fathers is where my focus has been. And really coaching former athletes, it really comes down to different mediums. Everyone responds a little bit different, but focusing on things like one-on-one coaching, group retreats. One of my favorite things to do is get a whole bunch of guys together on that, and online learning, public speaking, and all. This will be the first one, but soon to be released book and podcast in the works. So, your audience gets to be the first to hear about that. So, uh,
Super.
that's a little
Super.
bit about as far as what I'm doing today.
Nice. Congratulations on the book. That's the first I've heard about it. So that's hot press release news, right?
Yeah.
Congratulations. Tell me a little bit about your journey into sport, if you don't mind. I'm always intrigued speaking to athletes and people that have gone down that path, because the discipline, the mentality, it must be
Yeah.
so challenging, right? So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so I mean, really, my journey started back when I was about 18 months old. So at the time, my father was a gymnastics coach, and he took me as a small 18-month-old to go with him and to when he was coaching, and I just was there playing on the rings. And yeah, he was really impressed with me, but also all of his gymnasts were impressed with me because even as young as 18 months, I could do a pull-up on the rings. And so that's kind of started my journey. My dad had always thought about, hey, how can I train them? And so really from about 18 months, he started training me in gymnastics. As soon as I could get into the sport, so whether it was baseball, um, you- little league football, anything along those lines, I always was that way. And a little bit, and it might have been the fact that one, during the time that not only was my father a gymnastics coach, but he was serving in the National Guard. And so my time with him was very limited. And I really appreciated when we did have that time. It really was geared around sports and my dad being active, him being, uh, he had his own sports accomplishments. He was super close. He was essentially next in line to make the U.S. diving team during his coming up. And he was a professional freestyle skier in his own right back in the day. And so that sport mentality was always there with my father. So whenever he wasn't working, he wanted to spend time with me, especially being his first son. I think it was one of those areas. So sports was kind of always ingrained in me. I remember watching Sunday night football all the time with my father, and ever since I was little, that was one of the few memories I have growing up, was just watching football with my dad. And I remember in the fourth grade, uh, we couldn't play tackle football yet in Idaho in the fourth grade. And my dad's like, "Do you want to do football?" I'm like, "I don't want to do flag football. I watch tackle football. I want to go play tackle football." And so I asked him, I was like, "Well, can I play?" He's like, "No, like you have to be a fifth grader." It's like, "Well, can we lie about my age so I can play?" It's like, "Well, you're going to be smaller than everyone else because you're younger." I'm like, "I don't care." And so he's like, "Okay, let's do it." So he let me lie about my age. We said I was a year older than what I actually was, and uh, started playing football a year earlier than what I was supposed to. And it wasn't until midway through the season when one of the other parents found out that I was a fourth grader, and the only reason they had a problem is because I was playing over their son. So I was starting over their son, and I was the starting running back, and they said, they told him, and my coach is like, "Well, technically, since you can't play, like, I will have to not start you." And so that moment really ingrained in me how cutthroat sports can be, and really to be like, you know what, it doesn't matter my size, it doesn't matter my age. I want to try to be the best out there on the field. And so it was a great learning experience, getting the opportunity to start firsthand, but then essentially having that taken away from me,
Mm.
due to really a factor that I thought didn't shouldn't have mattered. And since it was taken away from me, it just drove that drive to be the best. And throughout my entire career, from that fourth grade all the way through high school, through college, I continue to have that really chip on my shoulder slash I'm the smallest on the field mentality, even though by the time I got in college, I wasn't the smallest on the field anymore. But it just helped me to continue to battle over and over. And honestly, coming from a big family contributed to that as well, because I was always battling my younger brothers. They were always trying to think that they were better than me, and I always had to prove that nope, I'm the oldest brother. Like, let me put you in your place. So
Brilliant, brilliant. And then from your career, I mean, fourth grade, what is that? Is that 7 years old, 6, 7 years old? What's,
yeah, about 7, 8. Yeah.
and you progressed that until, did you take that semi-professional, professional? How far did your sports?
Yeah. So yeah, got all the way through college. And really it was at that point where a big decision really had been made. So I knew based upon just performance of my college, what was happening scout wise, talked with some previous former teammates I had, and just knowing what that path was going to look like for me forward. More than likely, I was going to either go from practice squad, trying to earn that spot, or go to Canadian Football League. I had uh, the skill set, everything to essentially go that route. But I had my first daughter in January, and that pro day, that option to essentially move forward was in March. And so I looked in as I was assessing everything, kind of took that analytical side, like, do I really want to be moving around my young family from city to city, trying to fulfill this career that really I don't have any stability. I don't know if I'm going to be making a team. I don't know how long that paycheck's going to last. And really trying to go this route, do and it just, there was so much uncertainty that I didn't feel like that it was appropriate to put my wife and my brand new child through that. So I graduated with 2 degrees, and I said, you know what? I got these degrees for a reason. I should be able to go out these and use them in the workforce. And so decided to make that hard decision, put my lifelong dream being a professional athlete on the shelf, and said, hey, I made it where not very many people could make it in the first place, and call that good. Well, I thought I was okay with that decision, and that put me down a path basically 7 years of and it constantly just built into depression, into furthering, I mean, no self-worth, changing careers because no career really felt right. Nothing could really fill this void that sports had left. And I had no idea that by choosing what I thought was the best route was going to essentially set up a possible, life or death situation where I was confronting myself whether or not I wanted to live.
Wow. I mean, that's if you're all right to explore that more, it'd be interesting to know how you sort of overcame that, or what triggered that to make you want to overcome that. Because I guess framing that question, well, you know, one thing we often see and observe with people and dads that we speak to is when they first became a dad, which correlates to what, you know, your experiences were. We start saying things like, "I used to enjoy this," or "I remember when," or "Oh, I once wanted to do that," and everything almost gets sacrificed because of the family grows. And it sounds like you've got a real life experience in that, that came with very apparent challenges. Um, how did you start to, I guess, A, recognize that there was something that needed to be resolved, B, start to overcome it? It'd be interesting to know more
Yeah,
about that if you're happy to share.
yeah, absolutely. So it was, you know, my first inkling as far as what was happening was, so that was, March, April, May when I graduated. The next football season come around August, September. And I made a decision. I'm like, I'm fine moving forward. Well, I sat and I watched a college game, and I was like, oh, kind of right back in there. I'm like, oh, I love this game, but I knew that chapter was already closed. And so the next Sunday, I try to watch an NFL game, and I'm sitting there watching it with guys I just played with that are now in there, playing on Sunday, and I couldn't watch more than 5 minutes of it. I was like, all these emotions rolled into me of essentially guilt, of really a regret that I didn't even try to pursue it. I made the decision that I, was going this route. And it was hard. And so for years, I couldn't watch any professional sports because it just drove this inner deeper wedge in me. And I just kind of pushed it aside. I was like, whatever, enthrall myself in raising my family, trying to provide for my family. Um, but then as on the business side, I wasn't where I wanted to be financially
Mm.
because I continued to compare it to what type of financial um, income I
He's up
could have been
there.
making on the
Yeah.
professional side. Yeah. And so everything wasn't adding up to that. So a year later, I switched jobs. 8 months after that, I switched jobs again, and going from job to job, trying to figure out what it was that I could fill this void. And I at the time I could never really explain it. I just knew it was there. And I remember conversations with my wife telling her about it. Hun, I don't know what's going on. And she couldn't necessarily understand it as far as what was going on. She said, well, it just seems like that you can't let go of sports. I'm like, it was such a big identity. She's like, well, I played high school sports. And I couldn't explain to her, like, the higher level that you continue to
Mm.
progress in sports, it becomes more and more as far as, well, this is what I'm doing. Because I mean, you go to college, most individuals, when they go to college, they're working towards a certain career. They're getting these degrees in order to be in this field. Well, I was in college to play football.
Yeah.
Yes, I got degrees, but I was in there to play
That was a
football so
backup,
I could
like,
go
yeah.
to the next one. Yeah, exactly. It was there to give me post professional education, so then that way I could pursue business pursuits. And so all these business pursuits and this whole idea of what I wanted to do, I didn't have the finances to do it because I didn't have the front end of the professional money going in. And so it just kept building and building. And I kept trying to just put myself further into these careers, further into my family. I had a second kid 2 years after the first one. Really just be like, focus on, hey, I'm just focusing on being a father, focusing on my faith, focusing on this career. Finally got to a spot where I opened up my own multi-line insurance agency. And I thought, okay, hey, this is a good ticket. This is, super challenging, super, all these other skills that you have as an athlete. I was able to translate, but still, because the finances weren't backing up my effort I was putting into it, it continued to drive that void that was there,
Mm.
continued to drive the depression. And so it all came to this big, huge old ball after my third kid. And I had her in September. And I remember it was the following April after Easter Sunday. I won't ever forget that Monday. And poor choices over the course of a period of time. Came home that day from work, and essentially my wife had my bags packed, said, "Honey, I need you out of the house." And it was at that point that I was like, no, like the one thing I'm good at since I graduated college is being a dad. Like I know that's the one area I'm good at. And now you're trying to rip that away from me. And I fought her and I fought, and it was, I finally was like, this isn't healthy for my kids for me to fight her. So it's like, well, how long are you, are we expecting this to go? And she said, I don't know. Like, I need a time. I need to see my kids. And so she's like, well, I don't know. So I left, and it was really at that point that I was just like, what am I doing? Like, what got me here? And as I was going through that, what was getting me here, it, that whole thought process, I was starting to realize certain things, but the overwhelming feeling was I couldn't overcome them. I was like, this is too insurmountable. I can't overcome this anymore. I not providing the life that I had promised my wife or my kids that I wanted. And I remember I was sitting on a railroad track. I knew what time the train came at night, had my lights turned off on the car and everything, waiting for the 10:30 train to essentially come. And the point of that track where it was, I knew the train was traveling at least 45. So I kind of knew how long it would take to stop, and it wouldn't be able to stop at this crossing. And I remember just sitting there, and I was at peace. And I was like, you know what? My family is going to get a good, healthy life insurance policy. They'll have the actual money that I promised them, and they'll be set essentially for life. And so I was feeling at peace at that point. Well, the train didn't come at 10:30, didn't come at 10:45, 11, 11:15. I've been sitting on this track for almost 45 minutes just waiting for it. I'm like, where is this train? Like, I've been at peace at this decision. Where's this train? And it never came. And it was at that point that, about 11:15 at night, clear as day, I heard God talk to me and said, your family, your kids don't need money from life insurance. They need a father, they need a leader. Your wife needs a husband. And I said, okay, I guess this is the direction I'm going, because obviously this train's not coming, and can't I can't deny that voice that I heard. So it was at that point that I made a decision to really let go of the past, the regret, everything I'd held on to. And just from that point moving forward was, how do I be the best father? How do I be that best leader? And not leader at home, but leader out at work, in the community, and everything along those lines. And it put me down a track as far as reaching out to former teammates, trying to find a coach, trying to find a mentor, and how do I improve myself and my situation. And once I made that decision, that void that had been there for the past 7 years started to be filled. And really, it was being filled with fatherhood. It was being filled with, I started to take my fitness a lot more serious, like I had when I was an athlete. And then also being filled with faith, and not just on that spiritual level, but really faith in the potential of the future. Even though it's going to look completely different than what I had ever anticipated it looking like, faith that that future is not only going to be bright, but brighter than what I ever imagined. So,
Wow, I mean, there's so much to unpack there, and thank you for sharing all that. It was a bit off any script that we had there, so
yeah,
I appreciate you sharing that. And there's a few sort of questions I'd like to follow on with that. The
yeah,
first one, though, I'd just like to, with the word faith, that doesn't necessarily have to mean a religious faith, as you mentioned. Uh, just
yeah.
just define that for us a bit, because I think some people leap towards faith as religion, and I think there's more to it than that. Am I right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's easy to associate faith with religion, because religion is definitely one of those things that it's hard to see, right? A God that's apparently there, but not there, that you can't ever see. But really, especially in sports, sports has really instilled a lot of faith as well. I mean, you go into a game not knowing the final outcome. You know what you've prepared, you know the preparation you've done, and whether or not you feel it. But if you don't have that faith, that belief that you're going to win that game, when something happens that is unexpected, it's a lot harder to actually, come out of that. They talk a lot in sports about like momentum, and that momentum shift you can feel. Really, a lot of that has to do with the fact of the faith of that team believing that we're still going to win. I mean, how many great comeback games have either you witnessed or you've seen or read about being able to go in? Classic example, I guess, movie that was produced was Miracle on Ice with the U.S. Hockey team and the Russian hockey team, and the fact that they should have never been in that championship game, but they were, and they had that belief, that faith, that of an outcome that wasn't determined. And really, that's what faith is believing in an outcome that is good, not knowing how you're going to get there, but just knowing, yeah, we're going to get there. It's going to happen. We're not quite sure how it's going to happen, but we're going to keep that attitude, that really that presence of mind that we're going to achieve it. So that's when I associate faith is along those lines.
And I guess joining some of the dots to what you were speaking about earlier, did you set your bar so high that any level of success was almost a failure? Because
it was. Yeah. And so I was living in this space, right? This gap of what you had achieved to what initially you want. And this gap that you're always in, all you see is the gap. But I never took the time to look on the flip side, which is how far I came. What was that progress? I mean, for me, I failed at making it to the NFL, but now I can have the appreciation that I went all the way to that point. That really, I mean, depending on what statistic you want to use, that's only 5% or even 1% of individuals who make it to even that stage where I made it to. Well, I mean, for me, that was just normal. And so for me, that was like, everyone did this, right? Everyone, went to this stage, and I didn't make it to this stage. So I never viewed myself as, being able to come to how far I actually did go. And now having that appreciation of I did go at a really, really high level on both cases, and having that appreciation has really changed my life since then.
Let's get out of the lowest point and sort of head back up the positive side of things. I mean, once you had that recognition in that moment, and thank God the train just never showed up. Did you surround yourself with people who could help you have a different outlook? Did you start mixing with different people? What happened to make you focus more on becoming the dad, not just the money provider or the insurance provider, God forbid? What happened? What did that look like? Because I can connect with a lot of what you're saying, and I think listeners can as well. So I think it'd be nice to hear the journey out.
Yeah. So, I mean, first and foremost was that inner self-recognition as far as where you are today. I think that was the most important one, is understanding the reality of, okay, hey, you know what? You didn't make it there. So what? Like, you are where you are today. This is where your finances are. This is where your family is. This is where you are. Recognizing, hey, my fitness, like that whole area as far as you as a whole. And I think too often we get caught on the era as far as what we are doing, and also, what we look like, right? Versus really that bigger one, which is who we are. And who we are is so much deeper. And so as soon as I started to recognize that, I recognized my weaknesses. I recognized the areas that I was lacking. And so I did seek out coaches for certain areas. I went out and looked at, okay, hey, I'm running this business. If I want this business to succeed, who do I need to be a mentor? So I reached out to other individuals in the industry and be like, hey, can you help me with my business? These are the things I'm struggling with. Can you help me with this area? Started to put away that almost as an athlete, a lot of times we get in this mindset that we can do it ourselves. We can go and train ourselves. We can go and do all these things. We have the capability, we have the drive, like we can do, we're competitive, we're going to do it ourselves, we're going to win ourselves. Well, as soon as I recognize that, hey, you know what? All these people around me have the potential to help me. Let me get their help. Humble myself a little bit, admitting that I'm not where I am and I'm not going to get myself there by myself. So that started along that path as far as getting back area. And then I went out and I started to really associate with other fathers that I had a high respect for and appreciation, and continue to talk with them and really be like, well, what are you doing in this situation? All right. How are you doing this? And so then that way I could start develop those skills in all those different areas, but really surrounding yourself with the right people. One of the things that I've always adhered by is, and I believe it was Darren Hardy that said in one of his books, and honestly, it's probably been multiple people that have said it, but surround yourself, at least, 5 closest individuals, with people where you want to be. And so as I looked at, other fathers that I had respect for, plus who had kids at an older stage, that was one of the key ones for me was, okay, hey, at the time I had a 10-year-old. I know she's going to be a teenager soon. I don't know what teenage years look like as a father. I know what it looked like as a child, being a teenager myself, but as a father, what does that look like? So finding other fathers who their kids had already been in that stage or currently in that stage was huge. So then that way I could talk to them with, hey, is this a normal thing? Like, is this so that was super powerful, is surrounding yourself with both individuals, fathers who are in your current situation. So kids are the same age, but also, fathers who their kids are older. I mean, I could always go back to my mom and dad, and, they had 7 kids, they had all this experience. But today's age is a lot different than when I was growing up. So having individuals who had been through that. So that was the same thing on the businesses. I got essentially a group, a cohort of other guys who were building their agency just like me, brand new. But we were being mentored by other individuals who had been in the industry for years. And so this combination of those currently in your same state, so you could talk about, the same challenges. You're like, oh, I'm facing that too right now. But then having, some other people that are there that have been, already through that challenges down the road, be like, oh, hey, let me tell you how to get out of that.
So it's very deliberate, and so it's like making a decision because that's on you. That's your responsibility, I guess, to go and find those people who are from different spaces. I often say, and I've said it in many a chat like this, that they don't teach dad in school. No one teaches you how to be a dad. And I think we try and wing it and we try and fudge it because we're a man and I can do it. But I think there's a lot of, hang on, I don't know what I'm doing at all. And if we can all admit that, we could get together and try and figure this out ourselves or together. I think there's a lot of benefit in that. I guess as a sports person, you have a coach, right? So why do we insist on doing so many things ourselves? You said as an athlete, you want to do things yourself. We see that in business owners and entrepreneurs all the time. You assume you have to be the accountant, the marketer, the salesperson. You have to be good at home. You have to earn enough money. You have to do this and this and this. Why? Why do we expect this?
It's a great point. It's a great question. And really, one of the biggest ones in, being an athlete was, are you coachable? Right? For me, I always respect every single one of my coaches I ever had. There were some coaches that absolutely, I would say, were above and beyond other coaches. But really, coach has a different perspective. They can see what you're doing in the midst of what you're doing. And you might be thinking you're doing this one thing, but the coach is seeing and being able to tell you, hey, actually you're doing, something completely different. And how willing, as an athlete in mind, knowing, hey, they have my best intentions. I've already told them my intentions. I want to be at this level. They're going to help me be at this level. So in the it goes back to, are you willing to be coachable?
Mm.
And you're right. When it came to being a father, it's like, I don't know. It doesn't come with a playbook. It doesn't come with, hey, this is, this scenario, what to do with this area, figure it out. Right. And so for me, I was like, okay, well, how can we essentially, it's almost like being a player coach, as a father. It's, hey, I'm going to go out, I'm going to execute on the same thing, but it would be nice if, I coach you.
Yeah.
Here, I'm going to coach you, Dad, over here, Dad one, on what to do. And then likewise, you're going to coach me because we're both going to go out there and try to do what we said that we would do. And you can tell me if I actually did what I said I was going to do. And so I just
Love
think
that.
back all the film sessions I had where I thought I was doing the right thing. And then I watch film, I'm like, oh my gosh, I totally wasn't doing that. My coach was totally telling me that I was doing this thing that I thought I wasn't doing. So yeah, it's definitely one of those things that, and maybe it's because, being a man as well, that's one of the things, right? We're supposed to be a provider. We're supposed to
Mm.
no, almost have it all together, right? When in truth, in reality, ain't nobody have it together. I mean, we're so far away from having it together that it's it's ridiculous for someone to say, I have it all together.
Exactly,
So
and I think outside of that, because the expectation that professional sports people have a coach is just a given. You have a coach, makes you better, but there's almost like an air of, is it vulnerability or perceived weakness that if we say, "Hang on, I'm going to get some help to help me figure this out," and I love the analogy of being a player coach. That's an excellent one. Yeah, it's there really is stigmas around it though, isn't there? And what makes a good coach in a professional sense, do you think? In the work that you're doing now, what makes a good coach, and what have you learned from the sporting field that transposes across?
I think really it comes down to almost just three things. The first two is a willingness to learn and a willingness to change as as the recipient of the coaching, right? So as a player perspective, right? So the player, you got to be willing to learn, you got to be willing to change. And then really the third one is honesty, complete honesty back and forth. It doesn't do anyone any good to try to sugarcoat things that are happening. And for me as a coach, that's where I was like, look, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I'm not going to try to build up your, ego. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you how things look from the get go, but also realizing that that doesn't mean that that's how it's going to be in the future.
Mm.
Like really having this understanding that if you're honest with where you are today and you're willing to learn and you're willing to change, and even as a coach, I take that as well as, as I'm coaching clients, am I willing to learn and change from my clients as well? Can I change as a coach? Can I bring something better to the table? And having that open, honest communication and just realizing that, hey, overall, I have your best intentions in mind. And with that, we want to make sure that we have this good communication going on and being vulnerable to that honesty. And it does take some time. It does take knowing that if I am open to you and let you know my weaknesses, are you going to use those against me? Because oftentimes, especially within the career field, I mean, you don't want to have a weakness that your employer could then justify letting you go. Like, oh, you're not good at this, and the job was supposed to be for this. Well, I'm going to let you go. And then now you got to go back to your wife and your kids and say, hey, dad lost his job. I don't know, how we're going to put food on the table next month, but you know, that's a hard conversation to have.
Mm.
But what I have found my personal life, and I had that hard conversation with not just my wife but my kids during that real low time, and I told him, I was like, look, dad made a wrong choice. And so dad has to leave the house. But by having that, that's opened up the door to now where my kids can come and they can talk to me about anything. They feel that they can have that open communication and dad's not going to judge them. They know that, hey, if I make a bad choice, I'm going to have consequences, but those are due to the choice. But dad is going to be there to support and he's going to be there with me. So having that can, what that not only builds trust, but it
Mm.
also builds that relationship to be stronger and fortify in the hard times. And in business, I think that's one of the biggest things that's missed within the business world with leaders is, especially authority figures, they don't want anyone to know their weaknesses. They want to be essentially like, I can do it all, like come to me. When if you are more open with those that you're supposed to either lead or have authority over, it instantly opens up the respect. And then now when people know, hey, you know what? I know my boss isn't very good at this. I know I'm really good at it. I'm willing to offer that help to him. And I know he would appreciate that because it's not going to come from a spot of, I don't think you can do this.
Mm.
Really, it comes from a spot of, you know what? I appreciate you coming because you know that this is a weakness of mine, but you also see that this is a need that we need to accomplish in order to hit our goals together. And so it really starts to open up this better communication, this better productivity
Mm.
and efficiency really in everything. So that way you can work together to achieve the goals. And that's one thing I always tell my kids, especially if there's any type of contention starting to raise in the family. Always will do a quick, hey, time out. We're all on the same team here. We're all trying to accomplish the same goal. So let's actually talk this through. And then once we start doing this, everyone's like, oh, okay. I see that we're all on the same team. So let's,
Mm.
you're really good at this. You're really good at this. Let's actually pull those together.
Mm. There's it's interesting to hear you flip flop between the professional setting and the home setting. Do you think there is much difference in the, I guess the dad role, if you like, a professional dad who goes to work and they might manage or lead a team, and then they go home and they manage or lead a team as well.
I mean,
Is there a difference in that? Do you think?
th-
How?
there shouldn't be.
Yeah,
There
go on.
shouldn't be, right? I mean, there's a difference as far as the level of those relationships.
Yeah.
You're not going to have that same intimate type relationship you have with your kids as you do with your coworkers, as you do with those that you lead. You shouldn't. In the business field, you should keep that more at a professional level. And so that intimacy, it changes as far as, what exactly you're divulging, right? It's a different level. But as far as the relationship itself, as far as the communication, as far as a lot of those transferable skills, they should be the same. It should be, what is our vision? And so you should have, what's the vision of the business? What is that end goal we're trying to work for? Likewise for the family is, what is our vision as a family? Is our vision as a family to, I mean, we have an overall vision of our family, and it's pretty simple, straightforward, which is, be there for one another at all times and help each other in their own individual goals, right? Those goals are always constantly changing. On the business sense, right, we're going to establish, well, what's the vision for this year, 3-5 years,
Yeah.
right? So in those sense, there are some little nuances that are different, but how you approach it shouldn't be different. It should be, hey, those things that I'm applying at home are applicable here. Those conversations are different, right? That's going to be what's different. Is my conversation is different. I'm not going to have, I shouldn't be sitting there trying to spend, 30 minutes every single week trying to figure out, hey, how's your personal life going, right? How can I help you? Oh, your marriage sucks. Let me help you with your marriage at business, right? That's not necessarily the role there, but understanding, right, as a leader in work is, do ask those questions. Hey, how is your personal life? I don't need to know details, but really, how is it? And if they're like, it's really hard, it's like, you know, thank you for telling me, because now I know that if for whatever reason you have a personal emergency come up because you're going through this hard time or this big change, right? I can be now as a leader, I can be a little bit more empathetic towards that and understand, but still value that person. Be like, hey, I know you're going to provide value to the team. I want you. So how can I support you in these outside efforts? I don't need to know details of the outside effort, but how can I support you? So then that way, when you are at work, you're fully present, you're able to help accomplish the goals. So so many crossovers, so many similarities, level of, that intimacy and that those conversations are different.
The nuances, as you mentioned, because I think there's times when when I can go home and I have to remind, hang on, I'm not their boss, I'm their dad.
Yeah.
And I don't want to manage them. I want to create an environment, like you mentioned, where we have a framework of values that we all grow up into, and they can try and grow up with respect, I guess. But professionally now, you work with just former athlete or predominantly former athletes, but in positions of leadership or business owners or employment, I presume.
Yes.
Obviously, it comes with that a level of ambition and a level of ownership, responsibility in professional and at home. How are you seeing dads juggling those roles, setting boundaries, moving from professional to house? And what issues are starting to emerge, or what are the themes that you think dads are struggling with currently? What's
Yeah.
on the radar?
I think one of the biggest ones is being actively engaged at home after a full day of work, depending on, whatever that role is at work. I mean, whether it's a business owner, most business owners, they're notorious for bringing work home. I
Mhm.
mean, they're constantly, the entrepreneur mindset is always in them. So they're always running, they're always thinking of their business 24/7. So that's one of the hardest things as an entrepreneur is to have them when they transition in a home is be like, okay, work stops at the doorstep and be actively engaged with your family. You know, work's always going to be there.
Yeah.
Just, set that aside. But there's a lot of even on the management side, that if they've had a rough day trying to deal with whether it's their bosses speaking, trying to get on them as far as deadlines, whatever those are, right? That stress that comes from work is not bringing that home. And so that's really I think the hardest thing is to get in that mindset of how do I leave work at work, come home and be an active participant in
Mm.
my kids' life. How do I put aside the fact of what I wanting to do, which is I want to come home and relax. I've had 8 hours of nonstop work, effort, like all this mental energy put into this area. And I just need to come home and just be able to
Yeah.
relax and not be demanded upon. And, but then coming in the door and instantly kids are going, Dad, so hey, Dad, can can you play? Can you do this? Hey, what's for dinner? Like all these, all of a sudden now new demands are coming. You're like, oh gosh, I just need to
I
get a
got
break.
that coming in about half an hour when I get
Yeah,
home.
exactly. Right. So it's how do I, get in this mindset of being active in my home when really all I want to do is I just need an hour to myself.
Mm.
And so really one of the things that I help a lot of my clients establish is understanding time blocking is, hey, you do need time for yourself. But as a father, we want to make sure that we're not sacrificing time with our family, our kids, for time for ourselves. And so how do we balance that? Where do we put that in the day? So then that way, when you come home, you can be an active participant, knowing that, I mean, like most of my kids, I mean, I have a 13-year-old and then all the way down to a 1-year-old. Each of them, I have a limited amount of time after work. But knowing that, hey, most of my kids are in bed in between 8 and 9 o'clock at night.
Mhm.
Well, does it provide more demands on me now where after 9 o'clock I can take that relaxation time and really that me time? And for me, it's going to the gym, making sure that my fitness is continue to stay on par so then that way I can be active with my kids. And so does that, you know, going to the gym, is that relaxing? Absolutely not. Like I'll be the first one to say it's not relaxing. There's plenty
No.
of nights where I'm like, oh, I don't want to go to the gym. I'm tired. Can I just like relax? But I know I'm like, I need to take care of myself physically. And as soon as I do that, then I can come home. And I mean, most days, do I get that hour of relaxation time I really want? No. But the longer that I've done it, I've realized that, I can be relaxed mentally and being actively present with my kids at the same time, which then re-energizes me for the next day.
Mm.
And it really is a big mind shift. It's hard, but I would say the biggest one to help with that, almost like burnout that you're experiencing, is learning how to time block the certain areas. So then that way you can be fulfilled in each area of your life
Mhm.
without feeling like that, it's like I don't have to sacrifice family time for my individual time or business time or like all this area. it's by time blocking now, it's you're really a lot better around.
Mm.
So
And you share a very real example in terms of when you get home, the kids are going to want to play and that might not want to play football, so it's soccer. In my garden, when I get back, and they'll want to show me Fortnite and they want to show me their tablets. And all I'm thinking of is it bedtime yet? When are they going to go to bed? And I'm the first to hold my hands up. They go to bed and you feel horrible because it feels like all you're doing is like beating them away or swatting them away. And it is horrible. But I'm sure nine out of 10 dads will put their hand up to say, I do that too. And I think that discipline or that ownership and the responsibility piece around blocking that time, yes, it might seem a bit arbitrary or a bit like you're putting your kids into a work appointment, but heck, if it works and it makes you more present at home, great. Yeah, I box off swimming lessons for my middle one. I've got 3. So swimming lessons for my middle one on a Saturday morning. I take my oldest one football training on a Wednesday evening, and I enjoy that time with them. But I know then when I want a bit of me time, I've done my bit. So
exactly.
it's justified,
Well, and you point out a really good one, and this is another one I always tell my clients is with your kids, it is so vital to have one-on-one time with them. Whether that's I mean, my daughters, they always call it a daddy-daughter date. They want to go, whether it's grab some, ice cream, but really, spending an hour just you and them. And but likewise, being able not just run them to swimming lessons, be there supporting them in that effort, right? They're still going to view that as one-on-one time, and the fact of, not only did dad drop me off for swimming, but he watched me. He was there present with me during that time. And it's amazing how much more that builds the kids' relationship with you because they view that. I mean, that time is so precious to them. My wife and I were just talking about this with my oldest being 13 is we only got 5 more years really with her until she's old enough and she can go out of the house. Your time is so finite with building a strong foundation with your kid. A lot of parents are like, well, I have forever to have a relationship with my kids. I'm like, no, you have a very limited time to build a strong foundation. If you build that strong foundation, then you'll have a strong relationship. You don't have forever to build a strong foundation with your kids. And as I look at it, that's one of my biggest things. Like, I'm just like you. It's so easy to fall in that. Oh, isn't it time for bed yet? Like, I'm so exhausted. And there's plenty of times where now I have a dedicated spot. I come in to put my phone because my phone, I mean, it'll blow up with like emails, the text stuff, like people that are trying to reach me. I'm like, let me put it away because I was like, if it's gone, like I'll be dedicated here. And it does sound arbitrary sometimes, be like I'm putting things in a box, but really it's setting up healthy boundaries so then that can build those areas. And my
that
wife,
physical action of doing something. I'm putting my phone in a different room. Therefore, I can't just have a cheeky look in my pocket while they're over there and refreshing my emails over here. It's like, come on, where are you? It's so frustrating, isn't it? But the traps are so easy to fall into. And you spoke about your experience with your dad when you were younger. He used to take you to the gymnastics or football. My oldest, it sounded exactly like my oldest relationship with me. He's 9, and he loves his first season ticket for Sheffield United, my football team, was this season. And he knows how important football is to me. So now it's our time together. And he does command so much of my time. He really does. It's like, we're going, it's our time. I play football with him on the grass. I'll do this. I'll take him training. I'll take him to his match. It's like, hang on, I've got 2 others I need to focus on too, But that one-to-one time, it's so important for him. And you're right, you could see him engage more. I'm just thinking then when you said, don't just rush them to the swimming, engage with them in the swimming. And you're right, we have a chat with my middle one on the way to it about what he's going to do, what he's done at school, what his favorite songs are, what he's been playing. And we'll have a bit of a laugh on it's only 5 minutes in the car, but we'll have a laugh about it. And I think them's the moments you remember, isn't it? Not the fighting to get them in the shower or fighting to get them to bed. It's that moment that's nice. And I think that deliberate step is super important for me. Yeah. I wanted to talk just briefly because I'm conscious of time. Fitness is obviously very important part of your life. I assume it forms a very important part of what it is you do professionally now as well, with an understanding of physical fitness, probably for working dads. Like me, it's the first, probably the second thing to go after. You remember, you used to have hobbies and habits. Fitness is so difficult to maintain as a busy working dad. So help us out.
It is. I mean, and I look back, it's always been a part of my life. I mean, I've done training, right? You do training outside of sports. You go and you're lifting, and then you're going and training. You spend hours in the gym, and it being a working dad, it's hard. It's hard to go to the gym. I'm not going to lie. Like I mentioned earlier, plenty of days where I don't want to go to the gym. It's not there. Yes, every time I go there and afterwards, I'm super grateful. I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I went now. But getting there it really is half the battle. But the thing that I notice is during that 7-year time span where I was slowly going down, is I did focus more on the business, more on the money, more on those things. And I went, I didn't even have a gym membership. I didn't even go to the gym for almost 4 years at one point. And what I notice is it frees up so much more mental energy by going. And it's one of the hardest things to commit to on a daily basis. And the biggest one is, it doesn't even have to be a lot of dads I talk to, like, well, I don't have a gym close to me, or, that's time consuming, everything that way. I'm like, think of it differently. Instead of thinking I need to go to a gym, I go to a gym because there's certain aspects that I love about a gym. But really, it's more of, what are you doing on a daily basis to be active? There's a lot of times that I know I'm like, you know what? I know I'm not going to get to a gym tonight because of all of these activities that I have going on with my kids and everything that way, what the evening looks like. So I was like, I'm going to make an extra effort after school. They come home, I'm out there being active with them for 30 minutes just in the field. I mean, just like you mentioned, you're out there playing soccer with your son. Those are the things that, as long as you keep in your mind, as far as, hey, am I active every single day? Because the point of your fitness, the point of your health, and really the biggest one I always try to tell them is, your nutrition plays such a big role than going to the gym. Like the gym, it's going to help you build strength, but really you want to keep your physical fitness, the whole thing up, because how long do you want to be able to go and be active with your kids? I want to be able to go be active with my kids as long as they're active. Likewise, I want to be active with my grandkids. I look at my father, who's a great example of that. And, my father is still, he's approaching, I think he'll be approaching 68 this year, but he's still teaching not only my kids, but my sibling kids. He'll teach them skiing in the winter. He'll take them up by themselves and he'll teach them skiing. And it's just one of those things where I saw how important that is in those relationships that can be built. And for me, I'm like, I need to do everything I can so that way I can be active with my children, my grandkids for the long haul. And it doesn't have to be, going to a gym. What it needs to be is, are you being active every day? Are you actually watching what you're eating, which plays a bigger role, especially in positions where you're more sedentary and you're feeding. So
how can we break the habit, Adrian? What's some quick tips around, as we head for wrap up, around breaking the habit around poor nutrition? Because again, guilty. It's easy to get something quick. I'm tired. I've had a busy day. I've done my time with the kids. I can't be bothered to make my dinner now. I was going to get something quick. So question one, around some tips around that. How can we break habits around nutrition? And I guess the second one, how can we get some habits going around better physical activity as well?
Yeah. So, I mean, really I'll give you my 3 non-negotiables I always tell all my clients when they're starting their, hey, a better fitness journey. Number one is, negotiable number one, get anywhere between 10 to 15,000 steps a day. If that's the only activity you have, that's more than enough activity.
I do that. That's good.
So that's negotiable, non-negotiable number one. Do that. Second one is drink your water. It's amazing what water will help you with different type of cravings. And water consumption, I would say at least anywhere between 80 to 120 ounces a day. If you can do that, you'll realize, especially the times when you are hungry, go to your water first to really see whether or not you are hungry. And then really the third one is, and because everyone's different, the preferences as far as what you like to eat and everything, is find a lifestyle that you can actually get behind. So I never tell anyone to diet. I always tell them to try to find a lifestyle they can get behind. For me, that's counting macros, knowing that, hey, I need to hit my 200 grams of protein on a daily basis. And by doing that, if I do that, my carb cravings, because I love carbs. I mean, you get donuts, pastries, stuff like that. I will go for those every time, but I know if I hit my protein goal first, I don't have as many cravings on that end. And
Okay.
but if I hit my protein first and still realize, hey, I can still have 100 grams of carbs. I haven't really had any carbs today. I can have the donut. I can have the pizza. I can have the pasta, stuff that way. So it's finding a lifestyle that you can see yourself actually eating along those lines. And it's about trying to keep it as simple as possible. Like for me, that's the biggest one, is keep it simple. Too many people try to complicate it. Don't try to do that. Just keep it simple.
It should be boring almost, right? Just part of
It should. I mean, I have the same thing for almost breakfast, lunch, dinner's about the only one that changes because my wife cooks dinner, and so she likes to cook. But we both came on this macro, balanced diet together. So yeah, but I would definitely say, breakfast, lunch, same thing every day for me.
And when would we start seeing results out of that, Adrian? When would you expect, if this boring, steady progress, the best things aren't necessarily exciting, when would we start seeing results from that we can physically, mentally attribute to our lifestyle
Yeah,
choice?
I mean, honestly, building habits does take a long time. And it goes back to that honesty level I was talking earlier, is being honest with yourself. I mean, if you're tracking your food, it's always good to track everything I do with all my clients. We track everything. We track how much time we spend with our kids. We track what we're doing on the different aspects of life, whether it be spiritual, whether it's how much time we're invested in business, everything along those. We track everything, and we want to track everything over the course of at least 8 weeks to 12 weeks, because that's going to give us a very good, healthy moving forward of how can we maintain this without having to track. And so that's really where I tell everyone is we're going to track this for all my clients. We track for 12 weeks. So we're going to track for 12 weeks. So then that way we can start to see the areas that we're improving, the areas that aren't improving, what we can adjust. And then by 12 weeks, you can kind of, at that point, it becomes almost second nature. So then you're not having to track as much. I still advise my clients to track certain areas because they're easy to forget. But I would definitely say, if you're doing this on a very consistent basis, easily 8-12 weeks down the road, you should start, taking that step back in the mirror, which is hard for men, and realize, oh, there is progress. Oh, look, my pants, they are a little bit looser. So, that's the biggest one, is just.
And I think there, Adrian, the biggest takeaway for me from that would be, this isn't about finding more time. It's just about fitting things into what you do already. You're going to eat. So what do you want to eat?
Yeah.
You're going to drink, make it water. You're going to walk to your next meeting, walk to your office. You play with the kids. It can fit in, I think, is a good takeaway for me.
Absolutely.
From
Yeah,
that.
I mean, we're not about trying to make our life more complicated. It's about just making every day just enjoyable in everything you do.
And I think that's got to be the summary point. I think make every day enjoyable. There's so much out there, isn't there? Adrian, how can we find out more about you? How can we connect? How can we see your journey and the work that you do, and learn more about what you do? Where can we find?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter. My Instagram is not as good, so I wouldn't suggest that. But Twitter, LinkedIn, it's just Adrian Bybee. Pretty simple. On either of those areas, you search me on that end. Those two areas, you'll see the updates as far as the upcoming book, upcoming podcast on that release. So have more information on that coming out as
Brilliant.
well.
And great to hear about the book. Good luck with that. I'll keep an eye out for it. Any idea on release dates, or are we
I mean, recently just met with my publisher. So depending on because there's actually 2 books in the work, but we're trying to figure out which one's releasing first. So goal is, fall, have a fall release. So
super. Adrian, we'll keep an eye out for it. Thank you very much for spending an hour with us and discussing your journey. It's fascinating to meet you and speak, and I'm sure there's so many takeaways for the listeners and the viewers. Adrian Bybee, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it, buddy.
thank you.